Open your ears and crack some beers. You are listening to the most recent episode of Retro Hangover.
Retro with classic gamers. Welcome to the podcast where we finalize frequent fatalities fairly from frothy friends featuring furious furries. This is Retro Hangover. I am your co-host, Chris Copleen, with Nintendhost LPTyger, special guest, Raging Demon, and, as always, your host, Shane. Test your dick, Might Dragon! Koski!
As a public service announcement from the Retro Hangover podcast, I would like it to be noted that if any of your friends do in fact happen to be frothing, please seek medical attention.
You're testing your dick might not be so well if it is frothing.
I mean, that depends on the froth, you know?
I think if it's bubbly and it's frothy.
Need to get a sample and test it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make a cappuccino with that.
Ooh.
That taste test it.
Yeah. There you go. Coffee dick art.
Test your coffee dick art in your Is it dickachino?
I was going to make a...
I believe the correct term is cockachino.
There we go. All right.
Right.
Out of all people, I expect you to be the least silent right now, Demon.
Well, I actually live in a city called Cockburn.
Also, I would just like it to be noted for the first time, I have seen Chris. This is in some inside baseball for everybody, but I've seen Chris on camera do the Dick Dragon intro, and I can confirm that this motherfucker does not pull away from the microphone whatsoever.
Not this time.
No, I don't think
Sometimes
ever.
I do.
This explains a lot.
Did I go to space again?
You always go to space. You are the Elon Musk of podcast intros.
If I could smoke some weed too, it'd be great.
It just cut out when you were halfway through it for me. So you must have got so loud it just attenuated the whole thing.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Discord was like, this man is unacceptable.
It's just another day.
Bye, Doge.
For us, yes.
To the moon.
Yep. And your placement of furries was quite apt given the game we're talking about.
What?
Do you not know the Mortal Kombat World Champions are furry?
Oh,
yeah.
Or did you do that by accident?
okay. Now I do.
Yes, we
Sonic
definitely
Fox.
meant to do
Sonic
that.
Fox.
They know about the Mortal Kombat tournament life.
Fuck's sake.
I was going to say, I don't. This is
Recent
not the game
times.
with Akuma. What's going on?
This is not brutal. Paws of fury, whatever it was.
God, could you imagine if he was in it and he had fatalities? Jesus.
Oh my God. Yes.
The puns you could have.
Yeah.
The pause. So, welcome to our show where we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat. I hope you enjoyed that brief banter that we just had there. Glad to have you on the show again, Demon.
Pleasure to be here.
Happy to have you here ever since we did that April Fool's episode with you.
Yeah, like I said, it's a pleasure to be here. I love talking fighting games. I could go on and on for hours, especially about Mortal Kombat. I mean, even though it does have a block button.
Yeah, it does kind of.
Yeah, that kind of fucks it a little bit, but yeah.
Also, welcome back, Tyger. I feel like I have this deep feeling. I don't know what it is, but it feels like you've just talked about Mortal Kombat recently. I don't know why, though, but it's glad to have you back.
Thank you. I don't know either. Like, it's just Mortal Kombat. I'm ready to talk about how much it sucks again. So it's bring it on.
I'm just going to set the tone for the rest of this episode now.
Oh my God.
Oh, is it a unanimous? I'm so excited to
think
figure
it
it out.
is. I don't know.
No,
Maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, it didn't suck,
There was a time.
but now,
Yeah, that was. You'd be slapped for saying that.
Right. This is the Street Fighter 2 killer.
If it can make it there.
Well, I don't know about that, but yeah. Yeah, it's basically a Sega Nintendo fight in the 90s, this one, isn't it? Except between two fighting game franchises.
In a way, yeah. Well, the same game.
Yeah.
You could say Sega. We understand that, you Australians are all upside down. So Sega is
that
okay.
a thing?
Yeah. Yeah, the younger people don't.
Sega.
That's what we used to say when I was a kid. But the younger generation now sort of like brainwashed to say it the way you guys say it. But yeah.
the right way?
They lack
the rest of the world says it.
How the Japanese say it.
I mean, listen, I actually don't have a lot of room to talk on that one because the creator of the GIF said that it should be pronounced GIF, and I still think he's fucking wrong.
He's wrong. He's
totally wrong.
And we all know that if it was on the NES, it was Ninja Gaiden, and anything after that is Ninja Gaiden.
Right.
That is correct. That is factually correct. Yes.
Also, illusion of Gaia, not Gaia.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Anyway, as we are wont to do on this gaming podcast, we do like to talk about the games we have been playing. And we have two guests today. So I think it is more apt to kick it off. I mean, technically we have one guest and our Nintendhost, but we do have a guest, which is Raging Demon. So Demon, what games have you been playing lately?
I've been playing Under Night in Birth, and I always fuck the title of that game up because it's got like 25 letters afterwards. But yeah, I've been playing that. Tetris Effect. And I played a little bit of Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2 on my... of course, I do own the games, so I can emulate them. So, yes. Not that would stop me. But, yeah.
No.
And I played various ports of it and have notes.
We can see, and we are happy to see them.
Yes.
Tyger.
What have I played? Oh, man. So, I want to mention that I've played this game called 2064 Read-Only Memories. And it's on Steam, and it seems to be some sort of point and click adventure that has to do with the future. And this dude made a robot which is has the ability to have feelings. I don't know. It's just like I had one of those things where you're like, I'm on Steam and I'm gonna go through the top of the list. And since it starts with numbers, I'm going to start with 2064 read-only memories. And one day I'll go through thousands of all my games and I'll be complete. And actually, the game itself is actually pretty cool. I was surprised how immersed I was in the story because it's a very story-based game. They talk about the government and how corrupt it is and basically
shocker,
kind of like the liberals of the time and the conservatives of the time and how they disagree upon each other. And one side's all about humans, be more human. The other side's like, yeah, you got to use technology for what it is. Everything's all the same. It's today. But
actually, I was about to say, it sounds like a fantasy world.
Right. So anyway, that's a fun game. I just dabbled into a few weeks ago. I haven't touched it. The most recent game that I've recently enjoyed. Recently is Mortal Kombat. It's funny. It's the same freaking letters. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Hey,
you got those new tracks?
Yeah. I've been playing the DLC. I have recently, not recent. I keep saying recently. God damn it! I was on a podcast a long time ago, and someone asked me what game would I take on an island by myself. If it was just me in the game, and I said Mario Kart 8 because I was actually in it at the time, and I love Mario Kart, specifically Mario Kart 8, so much that I love it. So I don't have anything for that. But the new DLC is just freaking awesome. I love the fact that a game so old that came out on the previous iteration is now on the new iteration. People were expecting Mario Kart 9. They're like, no, we can still. they
milk this thing.
It originally has 32 tracks. They're like, what's another 32? Yeah.
Was that including the original DLC on the Wii U?
Yeah. So the original Wii U, I can't remember how many, but yeah, it did include the DLC from the Wii U. So that's why the Switch version is called Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Right.
And then now they're coming out with 4 more waves of 2 courses each. They've already released 4 courses. I think I said that right. and they have 2 more waves of 4 more courses to go, I think, through next year. I can't remember the courses. One of the memorable course for me right now is Waluigi's Pinball. And that came out on the recent wave. Yeah, it's fun to see how they redo all of the courses to current gen consoles, and it's Mario Kart.
I think it's like they've hit a point of diminishing returns as far as like what new shit they can do or how much better it can look, right?
For sure.
It's just like let's just keep adding to this because it's fine the way it is.
Completely agreement, because I was like, Mario Kart 9, like why?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? Yeah,
it looks beautiful. Just go ahead and keep adding courses. And so when they announced it, I was like, yeah, I'm down. What else are you gonna do?
Be like season passes.
Yeah, I bought it too. I haven't played the newest wave yet, but I played the first set. So
yeah. And if you played the mobile version like that, some of those courses are on there too. So that was nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
I finally kicked that habit though. But
yeah, no, it's not really a great habit, the mobile game.
Yeah. Although, I don't know if you saw this, but apparently they have announced that they are removing like the gacha system from the game now.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but
it's not.
But that's nice.
Apparently they're just changing the shop so that you can just straight up buy stuff with rubies.
They're done with the game and they're just going to repeat it over and over again somehow.
Yeah.
Like the Wii U.
Rip.
There was a moment where I considered reinstalling Mario Kart Tour again after I saw that announcement, and I was like, no.
Yeah, I'm good.
Not doing that.
I'm good. So that's me.
All right. Shane.
Well, it's certainly not Mario Kart Tour, I can tell you that. But no, honestly, mine's not super interesting this time around. If I'm being perfectly frank, it's just kind of more of the same. I haven't really had a lot of time to do a lot of diverse gaming, so it's really just been making more progress in Fallout 76 because that campaign is freaking huge.
Wow.
And I'm still plinking away at making my way through Final Fantasy V the right way this time. So I actually just got the last crystal this afternoon. I am well on my way. Unfortunately, I had to say goodbye to Galuf, but that's okay. But yeah, that's pretty much it for right now. What about you, Chris? What you got going on?
Well, if you follow our Twitch channel, which by this point
I refuse.
That was a while ago. I know, right? If you followed our Twitch channel a couple weeks ago now, you would have seen I've been playing East 5, Sands of Kefin, or whatever the fuck it's called. It's a really short game, so by the time you're listening to this, it's probably over. So if you want to catch those playthroughs, just head over to our YouTube channel and you can see me playing that game there. And I'm actually having a really good time with it, which is mesmerizing because if you go on any one of the YouTube channels and look up East 5, is pretty much condemned as the black sheep of the East series. And yeah, it has its problems, but I'm having a really good time. I'm enjoying the extremely low difficulty and overall short length. So it's hard for me to complain too much about it. I'll be making a RFR about that. As now I'm calling a rambling freely review because there's nothing rapid about them whatsoever. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to complete it, maybe even after this podcast. I'll see how things go and how I feel afterwards. In addition to that, I've also been playing Mega Man: The Wily Wars. I've gotten through all 3 main Mega Man quests, so I'm done with Mega Man 1, 2, and 3. I just have to go through Wily Tower, and I've never done that before, so hopefully that's not too long or difficult. I don't think it will be, but who knows? It probably is incredibly difficult, and I'm going to be frustrated and break my Sega Genesis over it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be difficult.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. So I'm probably going to be very angry. And I've also been playing a game that not for this. Well, I played a little bit of the game for this podcast, but I did play it. The game after this one, I've been starting and I fired it up and I'm trying to get into it, playing a version that Shane hates. So hopefully I do not walk away with it with any negative feelings. I'm going to stay silent about it on this hill as well.
Whatever could it be? And for the record, I told you that the only people that truly despise that HD remake are the people who played the game and loved it beforehand. If you had like not a lot of prior experience or you don't have attachment to it, you probably don't give a shit. But like they royally fucked up that HD remaster. They really did.
Are you saying that the people that hate it are part of a cult that likes to kidnap children, female children, in order to worship their devil-like representative?
I feel like that's a very large leap of logic.
They kill puppies too.
They do.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are here today not to talk about killing puppies. I guess technically, I mean, if you make a far enough leap, you can kill puppies in this game, but there are no puppies in this game. We are talking about Mortal Kombat, which has a storied legacy and a long and important history. But we're going to step back this week and we're going to let one of our guests talk about it. A fighting game aficionado. That's not Tyger, because we know he is also a fighting game aficionado. But our guest today, Raging Demon, who is going to be giving us a brief history of Mortal Kombat. So, Demon.
The world has been enveloped by Street Fighter 2. Well, at least the arcade world. And if you want to compete, you need to develop a competitive fighting game of your own. Midway Games definitely wanted some of that Street Fighter 2 cheddar, which meant they needed to make a fighting game of their own. They would turn to Ed Boon and John Tobias, two relatively unproven members of staff, to churn something out to compete, and perhaps defeat Shang Long to stand a chance. The result would become much larger than probably any had anticipated, and created a cultural phenomenon of their own, even beyond video games. This test of might swelled to become the second most recognizable fighting game alongside its aforementioned competition. This was Mortal Kombat. Given a budget of $1 million and an initial team of 4 people, the team wanted to create a game like Karate Champ, except with digital graphics of Pit Fighter. Midway also informed the team they wanted an action game based off the movie Universal Soldier with Jean-Claude Van Damme. As it turned out, Van Damme couldn't be part of the game, because he was already in negotiations for another video game. A video game that wouldn't ever see release. As such, the team went to what they said was their original idea, a ninja-themed fighting game. And after getting released from the burden of creating a licensed game, they would soon be implementing more and more crazy, over-the-top moves and ideas. One of these ideas, eventually, but not initially, was to incorporate a bit of ultra-violence. The game would initially feature 6 playable characters, but due to some playtesting and extra development time, they would eventually settle at 7. All of the characters in the game would also be digitized from recording from John Tobias' Hi 8 camcorder. The game would be released in arcades October 8th, 1992 in North America as Mortal Kombat. Other names of the game that were considered were Kumite, Dragon Attack, Death Blow, and Fatality. But the final name was settled when the word Combat was written on the drawing board in Ed Boon's office, resulting in that concept just sticking from there. The reception was a tremendous success, with the game becoming the highest grossing arcade cabinet in October to November of 92, and several periods in 93 only behind NBA Jam. The home versions released in September of 1993 in North America and Europe would sell over 6 million units worldwide, most of which would go to the Sega Genesis due to its not-so-secret blood code. Critics would also enjoy the game, with many criticizing the lack of violence not seen in the arcade version, but praising it as an overall solid fighting game. Beyond that, Mortal Kombat created a controversy that extended beyond video games. Because of the violence it featured and arguably celebrated, old stodgy American congressmen got quite offended. Senators Joseph Lieberman and Herb Kohl made it a point to go after Mortal Kombat, alongside other games like Night Trap, Doom, and Lethal Enforcers, as a showcase as to why the video game industry needed to be regulated by the government, unless the industry could get it under control themselves. As a result, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, the ESRB, was established, a tool that continues to help parents ignore what their kids are playing. Mortal Kombat is one of those games that not only found a way to compete with the biggest games of its day, but also permeated culture as a whole. its legacy extends far beyond the boundaries of its own confines of the series, but still affects, to an extent, video gaming as a whole today. The series does live on, now with 12 installments that are still played frequently in the competitive scene with no signs of slowing down. And that is your brief history of Mortal Kombat.
All right. Thank you, Demon. I'm glad you struggled through my poorly written brief history. And I tried to set you up for success as much as possible, but I failed. But you did a fantastic job in light of that.
Very long. But so is the tale of Mortal Kombat.
Indeed.
They made the rating system. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There would be no ESRB without Mortal Kombat.
They only tacked on those other games to give themselves a bit more steam when they took it to the Congress and all that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, not your Congress, obviously.
Well, we've got our own story about Mortal Kombat here, but yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was about to say, I didn't think anyone in Australia really cared. I mean, you're just a bunch of former convicts anyway. I mean, why would you care how much violence is in your game?
Well, we're all Kano here. So that's just, he's just a regular guy. But no, like obviously this Mortal Kombat 9, was flat out banned here and never got released until we had to change our rating system.
Holy shit.
Oh.
Yeah, we didn't really have a rating system even. We got the ESRB ones and then we sort of mimicked those. And then there was no R. There was no R rating. So some games just got straight up banned. And it was Mortal Kombat 9 that finally got that over the line because it got banned and people were so upset about it.
Wow.
That they finally got their shit together and made an R rating.
That is fascinating.
That's interesting. I
It
had
was
no clue.
one state holding it up too, because this needed to be like, it's a sort of federal thing. So each state had to agree. And there was just one state that wouldn't. And that, I'm pretty sure it was South Australia, but it doesn't matter. It was just one dude who was just like, nah, we don't want. And then eventually they got them to come around. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat affecting rating systems worldwide.
Yeah.
Offending the Australians so much they had to make a rating system.
I bought my copy from the UK, so it didn't affect me. But yeah.
Those damn black markets.
They weren't stopping us.
All right. So we're going to move on to our personal experiences. I know you just read the history, so I'm going to let you take a little bit of a breath here, Demon, and we'll catch up with you in a moment. But let's kick this over to another one of the fighting game aficionados, and that is Tyger.
Oh, I thought you were going to say me.
Oh, yes.
How dare you, Chris? Don't you remember?
I like all of the man-on-man action.
Shane's he's FGC.
That'll definitely not be clipped and put out of context.
He hates Sonya. He hates female fighters, apparently.
I'm just saying, man. Goro's got 4 arms. Just think about the possibilities.
Do with your imagination what you will.
Yeah.
Hey, he's perfect in that one scene of Total Recall, then.
That is true. He's even got an extra hand.
He does. Well, to pleasure himself. Tyger.
Oh, right.
What is...
It's efficient.
What is...
Jeez, you guys. Jeez. Jeez.
Are we just avoiding talking about Mortal Kombat? I feel like we are. All right. Tyger, tell us about your personal experiences with Mortal Kombat, please, so we can stop talking about whatever it is we're doing now.
Bore the listeners with such a such a thing.
What Goro could do with 4 hands.
Oh boy.
And if you're not into that kind of thing, just wait around till Mortal Kombat 3.
Right. Good point.
More arms.
Is it like that's the horse person,
No,
right?
no, the female Goro.
Oh yeah, Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
All
Yes.
right, so Mortal Kombat personal experience for me. I feel like I've talked about this before.
I feel like I've heard you talk about this before.
Yeah. So like,
it's crazy.
My first experience with Mortal Kombat was in the arcade, and during that time, Street Fighter 2 was, the thing. Me and friends would always go up to the arcade, generally on Saturdays. It was a putt-putt golfing games, by the way. Street Fighter 2 would be our go-to, unlimited golf until like noon. And then we spend our 40 tokens generally just trying to get a shot at Street Fighter 2. I do remember when Mortal Kombat came in, because when that game came in, Street Fighter 2 was all of a sudden somewhat empty. Not completely, but like everyone was hovered around this Mortal Kombat game. And I just remember being like, not excited, but surprised. I was surprised that, OMG, look at these super high def graphics. These people look real. And, and I remember like the first time I played the game, I was surprised that there was a block button, which was really confusing at the time because, in Street Fighter 2, you just hold back. But I do know that was problematic. So it's good that people now know how to block. But the thing that obviously stood out about Mortal Kombat was the fatalities. And that was like the thing that everyone wanted to do and the thing that everyone talked about when the game came out. So that that really made its mark in the arcade during that time. And even like fast forward, it comes out on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. I remember like my friend across the street had the Sega Genesis version. I had the Super Nintendo version, and like I swore
You poor kid.
that the Super Nintendo version was so much better. And then, everyone would say the Genesis version was better because it had blood or whatever. But playing it now, actually, I kind of agree that Genesis was much better. But anywho, that was my personal experience when Mortal Kombat first came out. And notice that I didn't say if I enjoyed it or not. It was, it was just a time that I remember.
That was, in fact, a thing that happened.
Right.
Indeed.
It occurred. Other things also occurred.
For sure.
All right. While Demon still catches his breath from reading the brief history, Shane.
I just feel like you're making a lot of assumptions about how exhausted Demon is after that. But
He is so exhausted.
I'm huffing and puffing.
well, it's fine because mine's gonna be fucking short. So your time is nigh, sir. Because my personal experience with Mortal Kombat is I knew it was the thing and I saw it like around some of the I would say arcades plural, but that wasn't really true because as I've said in previous episodes, we had like one. So it was more like pizza joints, things like that. But I did see it around. Honestly, I didn't really have a lot of experience with Mortal Kombat at all until MK2. That's really where it kind of took off for me. That was the thing that suddenly everybody, at least in my little hometown, gave a huge shit about. Like everyone was around the MK2 machine. I can't say a whole lot for the original here, but I was aware that it existed. I don't think I ever actually played it on a home console until way, way, way later. The first one kind of just totally missed me. So in my head, as far as I'm concerned, MK2 was the first Mortal Kombat. That may or may not be some foreshadowing about how the rest of this conversation is going to go, but, there you have it.
Good one to skip.
All right, Demon, do you have your breath back?
I do.
This is a great game to not play.
It's funny you said that, Shay, because I actually played Mortal Kombat 2 first. So
See?
Yeah, I knew about Mortal Kombat. I heard about it, but I was very young when it came out, right? So I would have been 7 or 8 or something like that. So, but I actually rented it. And my parents are the kind of parents who don't know fuck all about video games. So they didn't give a shit. They just rented me whatever I wanted. I got Mortal Kombat 2 first. And I just remember being on that pit stage and just the computer like doing the stage fatality and me being like, what the fuck just happened? Looking at the screen and seeing my character splattered on the floor. But this game is just epic. It's just the mystique behind this game, the shock value. I remember seeing this in arcades, and it wasn't until like my uncle, he didn't give a shit what we played either. So when we went around his house, he was just like, oh yeah, just go play the Mega Drive and whatever. And I've chucked the original Mortal Kombat on, the first one on the Mega Drive, and that's the first time I played this game on a home port. And I played the arcade a few times after playing Mortal Kombat 2 because we had it at our local rec center. But it's just funny because the big deal they were making over the violence and all that, yet they would just stick an arcade cabinet in the middle of a recreation center, and kids could just play it. But this game, I have great memories of playing this game, and I even had it on the Master System.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
It was awful.
On both accounts.
So you want to talk about the thing that happened that you're not going to talk about whether you enjoyed it or not? Well, I had a Master System version.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it is. It's still got blood in it.
I mean, we know there's a Game Boy and Game Gear. I mean, if there's a Game Gear version, there's a Master System version. That's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, though. People, like, this is like the first car or the first plane, or even just like another good comparison, Sonic 1. Why would you play it? You know, like,
excellent
as soon
point.
as number 2 comes around, there's a spin dash and all that. So it's like, it's not a bad game in my opinion, but yeah, number 2 is where it was really at for me.
All right,
Well,
Chris.
that saves the suspense for later.
Yeah.
So my personal experience, like, I don't know where the first place I played it was. It could have been the arcade. It could not have been. It could have been at the home console. The only thing I know is I played a lot of the original Mortal Kombat, and I played it both on the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. And I know I owned a copy of it for the Super Nintendo, but not the Sega Genesis. I know a lot of my friends had a copy of the Sega Genesis. And here's the crazy thing about Mortal Kombat. I think no matter who you were in 1993, once it came out on the home consoles, if you knew about Mortal Kombat, you knew the blood code for the Sega Genesis. It didn't matter if you owned the game or not, because I didn't, and I knew the blood code for the Genesis. It's ABACABB.
It's Abacab.
I've met, Abacab. It's like named after something. It's a homage to something. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's a song.
Oh yeah, there you
go. There's also a metal band named Abacab. It was inspired by the Genesis code, but
so it's a code inspired by the Genesis game, inspired by the band Genesis. That's awesome.
I didn't know that.
Everybody knew that fucking code, man. And the thing is too, is I remember playing the Super Nintendo version. Like, the Super Nintendo version looks a little better. It plays a little better, but no one gave a shit. Like, it didn't matter. It didn't have what people wanted for Mortal Kombat, which was ultra violence. They wanted the blood. They wanted the gore. They wanted the fatalities. They wanted Kano ripping the heart out of a person. They wanted Sub-Zero ripping the spine out of somebody. That's what they wanted. Even though, technically, I think the Super Nintendo was slightly better. But that's not what Mortal Kombat was about. But, like, I remember playing the hell out of this. And then Mortal Kombat 2 came out and everyone forgot about it. But until Mortal Kombat 2 came out, this was like the jam. It made people put down Street Fighter 2 for a second and say, hey, look, like, there's another fighting game in town. And we all know you don't have enough money to get a Neo Geo. So you better check this out or you're going to be bored. So that's essentially what everybody did. And it hit that sweet spot that was kind of in that gap between Street Fighter 2 and its many sequels. So like right before Street Fighter 2 Turbo came out, there was Mortal Kombat and people gravitated to it because we were all little edgelords. We just didn't know it yet.
Well, it's important that this come out as well, because there really wasn't a lot of competition going around for fighting games.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the reason I made it, I sort of parallel with Nintendo and Sega was because this is the Sega of the fighting games. It was good enough to make Nintendo bleed, but not good enough to be better, right? So I don't see Mortal Kombat as better than Street Fighter. That's why the Super Nintendo version failed so epically, because you can't sell Mortal Kombat on gameplay alone, and that's what they effectively did by taking all the gore out. And I played this SNES version, and it's a bit smoother in the combat, but there's some music missing, I think, as well. But generally the music does sound better, the sound effects sound better, and the gameplay is a little better. But again, I'd just play Street Fighter 2 if I was going to.
Exactly. I like how you said it that made Nintendo bleed. That was a good.
It
I got
did.
it.
It did though. It made Capcom bleed
made
a little
them
bit.
Sweat.
Yeah, and that. It made them sweat everywhere. But yeah, it put Capcom on notice as well, and that was good.
Yes.
Yeah, because in North America,
sure.
SNK were not doing that. So
I do think it's worth noting too. Like, you look at 1992, and it's kind of a year. And I know we're making a lot of allusions to something Tyger's talking about, and I'm kind of making an allusion here for a future project we have for all of you that we can't quite talk about yet. But like, you look at a year like 92, and you look at what Sega was offering at that time, and it wasn't really a lot. Like, it had some really big standout titles, don't get me wrong, but Nintendo was just absolutely dominating what was being released. So Nintendo was starting to swing the momentum, especially with the Street Fighter 2. And then you have Mortal Kombat come out in 93. And if you look at the overall console sales in 1993, Sega outsold worldwide the Super Nintendo by 2 million units. And then you have to take in consideration that Mortal Kombat sold significantly more on the Sega Genesis than it did the Super Nintendo. You know, was it causation or correlation or however that saying goes? Like correlation does not exactly causation. You know, I botched that, but
we got it.
Yeah,
you were close.
I was close, but it could have had a profound effect. Like, it really said that, hey, Sega, the Genesis, Mega Drive, that is the console for big boys and girls, whereas the Super Nintendo is the console for children, which is a perception that continued to plague Nintendo for a really long time. I mean, eventually Nintendo would ultimately drive the nail in the coffin probably the next year, but like, this is one of those games that just kept that system selling more than Super Nintendo, in spite of probably the overall lack in quality that the Genesis or Mega Drive had in comparison to the Super Nintendo.
I believe that those are all excellent points. And then we should probably move on to talking about the rest of this shit about Mortal Kombat.
That was about
40
Mortal
minutes
Kombat.
into an episode.
That was about Mortal Kombat.
Y'all pontificating in here.
Yeah.
We got to talk about plot.
What plot?
Sorry.
Well,
Oh, Demon has it.
they did a lot of this on the go. They did a lot of thinking on the fly when they made this game, though. The creativity in this game's amazing. You know, like the Easter eggs, even the plot. It's like, oh yeah, if you win 10 of these tournaments, we can take over your world. You know, it's just all the tropes are there. I love it. I love how they just basically it's a spoof, but it's not. You know what I mean? It's not like a clay fighter. You know, it's actually, this game got taken seriously as a fighting game, even though it is full of tropes. You know,
I mean, it does have a plot. Yeah.
Yeah, the plot's pretty, you know, it's like every
pretty
fighting
shit.
game plot. It's like, if you win this tournament with your fists, you'll save the world somehow. So, yeah, quite literally in Mortal Kombat's case.
Mm-hmm. Tyger, I think you're good to continue this one on. You seem like a Mortal Kombat plot guy.
I love his notes.
So, LOL. That's all I have. No, like, I mean, I kind of compare it to Street Fighter. Honestly, it's kind of the same thing, even though Street Fighter 2 didn't really go into a story like Mortal Kombat did in the, you know, while you're poor and you can't put coins in the machine, now you have time to read the story that Mortal Kombat had in, like, you know, 2 paragraphs or whatever. The only thing I get is that, you know, you have that overall, you know, it's a tournament. Every person that wins has their own, like, continuation of somewhat of a plot in their backstory. And Street Fighter did the same thing, really.
Yeah.
So I'm very like, yeah, plot, darkness, skulls, souls, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's like, whatever.
But look at what it's become, though. With all the lore. And all that.
No.
Yeah.
For what it's become, that's like a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm sticking with Mortal Kombat 1 is like, you know, they have a start. Good start, I guess.
They let our imaginations do all the work. That's for sure. You know, like.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Definitely. I mean, you didn't really need to flesh out anything back then.
Well, and I think that actually helps in a way.
Yeah.
In that, you know, I think it maintains this like level of like mystique, right? Like around the characters and the sort of universe that they're trying to build here. You're talking about like the plot as it goes through the rest of the series. On one hand, like it's nice to expand on those things, but I kind of look at it the same way as I do like the Han Solo movie. Like I didn't fucking need that. Like I didn't need to know the backstory of Han Solo because part of the mystique of his character was that we didn't know all of it. Like, you know, why is he the way he is? Why does he do this, et cetera, et cetera? And you could fill in the blanks. And that's what made his character compelling. And then when you go like, oh, his last name is Solo because a guy said he was alone and didn't have a last name. So he wrote down his last name was Solo. I'm like, fuck you. Like, what? That's terrible. And it's like kind of the same feeling I have about some things like this where I appreciate that, and I know this isn't what they were doing initially. They were probably just like, I don't know, we came up with some shit. Here you go. But looking at it now, I do appreciate that there isn't, an exhaustive like lore book behind this or something, because most of the time, whatever your brain's going to fill in for, the missing pieces generally is going to be more interesting, at least to you, than whatever it is that they're going to just kind of like force feed you. Plus it fosters that sort of like schoolyard conversation, right? Of just like, oh, what do you think this is? And blah, blah, blah. And you kind of lose that when they sort of just like fill in all the blanks for you.
Well, and explain it all for you, right? I mean, this game's has more rumors and urban legends than any other, like from the time, you just Street Fighter 2 had Shenlong. That's all it had. Right?
Yes.
It doesn't have all of the various, and you can do this secret fatality, and then all the, obviously, the Tomb Raider urban legends, if you know what I'm saying. Like of all the female characters, all of one in this one. But yeah, like it's just all the what can you do and what can you unlock, and you can play as this guy, and there's another ninja and all this sort of stuff. I mean, this game is full of stuff like that, and they did it by not telling you anything.
Yeah. Well, they have a little intro where I think they tell you the backstory of some of the characters.
Yes.
And what their motivations are. Like, especially in the arcade version, it'll be on the rolling prompt, whatever it's called, where they try to bring you into the game, and then the demo and all that stuff. But I will say this, like for a fighting game, it's not quite as in depth when you start looking into like Fatal Fury. And what's the accompanying one? So there's the one with Terry Bogard, Fighter's History, I think.
Oh, okay.
Not World Heroes. That might be too, but they're interconnected. And there's like this kind of woven in plot between those games, and it ties into the King of Fighters and all that stuff like that. So it's not quite as in depth as what SNK was trying to do, but it's certainly a little bit more in depth when you think about like the layers of complexity they were attempting, even though it was like over the top, goofy tropishness, as Demon said. It's a little bit more complicated than what they were trying to do with Street Fighter 2, which was just, bad guy named Bison is, trying to take over the world, and all these people are just trying to prove themselves. Where here you have like Sang Shun, who's like stealing souls and is running this tournament. You have to defeat him in order to save the planet. And he has this evil like monster defending him in Goro. And everyone has their motivations, like Kano and Sonya, or they have their like intermingling relationship where Sonya's chasing Kano as like a special agent, and Kano's like a convict. So like Demon said, he's Australian, of course, and as the movie proved. And you have like the rivalry between Sub-Zero and Scorpion, which everybody knew. Like everybody knew that. Like everyone knew they were rivals, even though for some reason I don't think they were in the movie. Bastards. And like Liu Kang, everyone was like, that was everyone's main, because he had this backstory that was just kind of created in this like ether that everyone just kind of accepted. So you look at like Mortal Kombat having this plot that was like really loosely in the game that I really think took off with a lot of the fans of the game, whether or not they were invested in the arcade or the home console version, which was really cool. And you just didn't see that from a lot of these types of games leading up to that. And it even got deeper later with Mortal Kombat 2. And as all of you said, like where the lore is at now is just insane.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting to note, right? Because I'm over here fucking pontificating about like the lack of plot being this like great device or whatever. But it should probably be noted that there was a lot more backstory to the original Mortal Kombat, but it was only available initially via a mail order comic book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so eventually it was sold just in stores, but from the get, you could only do it via mail order. And so that filled in like a lot of the backstory about like Shang Tsung and Goro and, all the other characters and how they got to the tournament and their backstories and things like that. So there is more there. But if you were like presumably most of us who A, did not even know this comic book existed, or, B, just didn't ever care or see anything about it, then all you really got was just what you saw, like you said, from like the initial crawl on the arcade game and
crawl. That's it.
Yeah. And like the brief descriptions of like the characters. And then you just kind of filled things in from there. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look at what Street Fighter 2 did with Super Turbo when they did add story out, like endings and stuff. So that was something you could see they added later to that game. But I think Mortal Kombat did just enough and a little bit more than the rest at the time to get your imagination going and make you want to read the instruction manual and see what their bios are and look for comic books and read magazines and stuff, if you're really into the game, that is. And then they take all these rumors and things and turn them into actual plot and characters in subsequent games as well, which I think is really awesome. Like that's another thing. These guys were kind of wild, these developers. They weren't like Capcom. They weren't like the other developers at the time. They kind of just did whatever they wanted.
They were definitely fan servicey.
Yeah, they very much.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have enough to be fan servicey at that time. Very much so later, though. Speaking of fan service, I don't know how I'm tying this in here, but how about let's talk about how this game plays. If you like to play by yourself or you like to play with others. Aha, there. I tied into fan service. Wow. Whatever. That was lame. Shane, how about you kick this one off? What did you think about how this game plays?
Oh boy. You're going to start with me, huh? All right. Sure.
As well.
Well, I mean, I feel as though most people are aware, if you've been listening to the show long enough, that I'm not exactly the biggest fighting game fan. It's not that I think that they're bad. It's just I am bad at them, and that's okay. So I kind of tend to stay away from them, but I have played enough, and especially some of the later entries in this series in particular, specifically MK2 and 3, that, sort of by comparison, I have a pretty good sense of things. And so earlier how Demon mentioned that the Super Nintendo version of this game, by removing the majority of the violence and gore, basically set up the game to be viewed and judged almost solely on the content and its gameplay. That was a bad idea because this game doesn't play well.
Oh shit.
Like at all. It's rough. It's rough. It just is. And that's sort of the conclusion that I came to about this game, is that if you take away all of that sensationalist stuff, you are left with what I would consider to be a mediocre fighting game. Like at best, it can be very stiff at times. The blocking thing isn't necessarily a bad thing, I don't think, but it was very different at the time. And I think that there's some other thoughts about that from some of the folks here with us today that I'm sure they'll kind of expound upon. But yeah, by and large, I just could never get into playing this game. And I know part of that was spoiled, right? Because anytime you experience an iteration on something, it's hard to go back to, the thing that started it, because most of the time they are very rough. But I don't know. I guess you'd have to talk to somebody who was like there at the time for a purer take on it, because as far as I'm concerned, I have never thought that this first entry in the series was particularly that good at all.
I'll go next here, and I can't say I disagree with you. So in preparation for this episode, I played both the arcade version of this game on an original arcade cabinet at Leaderboard here in Orange Park. Shout out to them. Enjoy it. If you're in the local area, they're fantastic. But I went to play and some Mortal Kombat, and yeah, I had some issues. Not so much like it played decently enough for an arcade cabinet. It's like, okay, I know I'm not too good with an arcade stick. I'm more used to the D-pad. That's how I grew up playing fighting games. So I was like, I'm gonna play some Mortal Kombat when I come back. I was good at this game when I was a kid. I'm going to play this on an emulator. I'm going to fucking slay. I'm going to just relive those moments. So I started out, I put it on easy, and I got fucking destroyed. It's like, you know what? I'm going to put this on very easy. And then I also got destroyed. I was noticing I was having issues doing any of the down to forward, down to back moves. I could do the back punch like Scorpion to get over here, the spear, and could do the uppercuts and the sweeps and everything like that. The roundhouse kicks. I could do all of that. When it came to executing any moves that required anything more than a double tap, it became really problematic. So I was like, okay, I'll change out my controller. Change out the controller, same problems. I'm like, maybe it's just RetroArch. So I loaded up a game that I thought would be very comparable and was a little bit more complicated in Street Fighter 2. And lo and behold, I'm pulling off Hadoukens and hurricane kicks and dragon punches like nobody's fucking business. I'm like, there is a serious problem with this game. I don't know how I was so good with Sub-Zero when I was a kid, but doing like basic special moves are a problem. Not to mention like the the AI is just harassing. It has no chill. And it's like it's a proven fact that the AI reads your button inputs and that's how it reacts to you. Fuck that. That is bullshit. And the block button sucks. And I just got to say, too, like for the Sega Genesis not having enough buttons, like I don't know how that's considered to be the superior version because the start button is the block button, whereas the Super Nintendo is the R button.
Well, where you're from, yes.
Yeah, it's so shit. I would say like definitely the superior version out of what I played is the arcade version. Like the Super Nintendo is just, there's something off about it. Maybe it's just because I'm old. I don't remember. I'm not sure, but it's completely fucked. Demon, what you got?
Well, I mean, we mostly had 6-button controls here, so I'm not going to criticize the Mega Drive version for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with basically everything. And my take on this is like what I said. It's like the first car, the first plane. It wasn't good enough gameplay-wise to compete with Street Fighter. It just wasn't. Like, because you're right, it kind of was a little janky. It was good enough to be a fun game to play and to be fun to play against people, but the gameplay itself, I mean, the block button, I'm used to that now with other franchises like Soul Calibur and stuff as well. But remember at the time hating the block button. I did play this for the first time on a 3-button controller because my uncle had a really old Mega Drive and that's all he had. So he sprung for everything. He got the Sega CD, he got all the add-ons except didn't think to get a 6-button controller. But anyway, I mean, and swapping between the high and low punch, you know, I believe you used B or start or something to swap. Start was block. There was a way to swap between the high and the low punch and kick. But yeah,
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I've played the Super Nintendo version. I think it plays a little better, and obviously the arcade version is the best. But Mortal Kombat, the AI is fucked. I totally agree. It's not fun. You know, it's you know, even when you set it on easy, it still just does the same janky shit, and then you have to resort to being cheap yourself to beat it. Everyone here who beat this game has probably done the same thing against Goro. You get a couple of jump kicks in, and then you just sit there wailing on him with punches while he blocks. And you just have to keep going till the round ends. It's got a lot of flaws, the gameplay. You know, like it really, without being too unfair to it at the time, because at the time it was quite a high standard. You know, you go back and you play it now, you're like, ow. You know, Street Fighter 2, yeah. And I'll tell you what proves Mortal Kombat's gameplay was not good is if you look at Mortal Kombat now, all the controls are completely different. You look at Street Fighter now, they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Right.
And just to say, when you're like, there wasn't much of a comparison at the time, realize that Fatal Fury 2, World Heroes, and Fighters History all came out the same year as Mortal Kombat did in the arcade.
Yep. I don't know what it is about SNK games at the time, though. Like, they just didn't capture a Western audience. Like, they just struggled in that way. And they're not bad. Like, I played a Fatal Fury game on the Mega Drive and it was okay. But, like, I just don't know what it was I mean, obviously, Mortal Kombat's got the shock and awe of fatalities, but, like, and the gimmicks of that. You could say there were better controlling fighting games besides Street Fighter than this. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I feel like I played the arcade version recently. I played the Super Nintendo version with that patch for the blood, which I thought was quite cool. But it held up well enough, but it's too basic and it's too unreliable input-wise to be sort of like something you'd play with your friends just for fun now.
Yeah. Tyger.
Yeah, I'm not going to be that mean. I do think there were some good things that kind of being, well, how do you say it? It's an old ass game, and you know it was the first of its kind, so they had to figure out how to start. You know, gameplay. Like I said earlier, the thing that people liked the most, you know, other than the fatalities or whatever, is that it looked real, and I think, and I guess we're going to talk about that later. That kind of helped with ignoring the fact that the gameplay was shitty. I will say that I was hypnotized in that for a little bit, you know, because we were so into the fact that, man, that's a real person there, you know, regardless of how they're jumping and how they're moving or whatever. It was very stiff, you know, in comparison to every other fighting game at the time. But it seemed like at the time people didn't care.
No, they didn't.
Yeah. And one thing that I want to kind of give them like props for, in a sense, is that their buttons actually made sense. So if you go to like the old Street Fighter 2 cabinet, you have jab, strong, fierce, short, forward, roundhouse. Those were the 6 buttons. And sometimes they made sense, sometimes they didn't. For a person that is, that doesn't know crap about fighting games, it could be a little much. One thing that Mortal Kombat did do is that when you pushed high punch or high kick, it literally was a high punch or a high kick. Low punch, low kick, block. All of it was there. All of it made sense. So it made it easy for the user, the player, to understand what they were doing or how to do it. I will say that as a beginner, people don't use the block button anyway. So it really didn't matter that it said block. Eventually, they'll understand, oh, block. I can not get hit. So.
I refuse to do that.
I'm still pretty bad. I still barely use the block button myself.
It's like breaking in an arcade racing game.
Yeah, I would say it's like that, or
it's like
take. It's like taking a move for your Pokemon that doesn't reduce HP. I nobody got time for that shit.
That's like the difference between the people that continue playing competitively and not.
Yeah,
like listen, I ain't got time for this block
the ones
shit.
that burn too bright to last too long. That's me. And I'm just like, I ain't got time to block.
Who would lower the other Pokemon's stats before attacking? What a waste of time. Just attack.
I know, right? That's a wasted turn.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, Mortal Kombat leans into this by rewarding you a lot for not blocking. Right? There's even in MK2, you can fight secret bosses by not blocking and things like that. So they know people don't want to do it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
We know our control scheme is ass.
I say, so what you're saying is I was doing it right this entire time.
But I'll give them credit as well that they didn't copy Street Fighter. They did come up with their own.
And that is good. That is a good thing because
they didn't do the thing that works.
They certainly didn't do something good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they also didn't discover the one button, one limb thing that that Tekken would do. So,
Jesus,
which would have been a better way, which they do now. But like back then, they could have taken that approach. But yeah, the high and low punch thing, I kind of like that. The high and low kick thing, I like that. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that is a solid point. It's much better than trying to figure out how to fierce someone.
I'll fierce you.
I think the one thing that also wasn't mentioned was the fatalities. So that's what the gameplay. I mean, who cares about any of the other stuff? Like that's what it leads up to.
Yeah.
So
what happens when you can't do any of them, Tyger? What happens then?
You go to Kmart and you go to the magazine section and you flip the book until you find some fatality buttons that will help you. So then you remember it or rip out the page, write them down in your little notebook.
Bootleg ass post-it note from somebody and just like, here's how to do this.
Rent the game. Hopefully somebody left their move list.
Yeah.
In the instruction manual, they wrote it in there.
This is after going through the Sears lingerie list.
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, it had the gameplay where it counted it during that time, and that was enough for then. But now, not so much.
Yeah, I mean,
so there you have it.
It just sounds like we savaged it hard, and it's a fucking game from like 92.
I tried my best.
93 or whatever. So.
Street Fighter 2 is from 91. Still holds up. No excuses.
True.
No excuses.
But you know what doesn't hold up? Street Fighter 1.
Oh, no, it doesn't. That's from like 88, though.
We don't talk about Street Fighter 1.
No, we don't. Not even Capcom talks about Street Fighter 1.
Right. Never existed.
Trying to get that trophy on the 30th anniversary collection was fucking, I hate that game.
Mortal Kombat, so great we talk about Street Fighter.
Yeah, but how can you not? Right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You have to.
How can you talk about Coke without mentioning Pepsi? You know what I mean? Like you can't. Like I just.
What is the RC Cola in this metaphor now?
Mortal Kombat.
No, well, I mean, sure, I guess. Okay.
Yeah. So what? SNK's Pepsi then?
Okay,
yes.
there you go.
Yeah. To be fair, they this was at the time quite a good game. And even though we're saying the gameplay was kind of shit, the gameplay of most of the games back then were kind of shit. So like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like you're right. Most of the fighting games that weren't Capcom or SNK, like they couldn't compete with Mortal Kombat. Like it was nowhere close.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that middle ground.
For me, the Mortal Kombat, the arcade machines, AI, just the AI in general was always what fucking made this game just so aggravating. You know, like if they had to fix that, this game would have, not that it wasn't successful. I just think it would have been next level successful. But yeah, I mean, they didn't know either.
Oh yeah.
And then you talk about cheap bosses. Boss rages are real on Mortal Kombat, that's for sure.
I don't want to think about it.
Reptile, right? How the fuck are you supposed to find him? Those hints that they give you are so fucking like vague, and you're never going to get there. Like reading that, look to La Luna, or what's some of the other ones? In the pit, you'll find me. Yeah, those ones, okay, maybe it's on the pit stage, but the rest of it, like you don't know that you need to not block, do a fatality, get a double flawless. You don't know about all of the actual important detail to getting to Reptile, or that the witch needs to be near the moon and all that sort of stuff. Like, fuck me. I don't know if anyone's ever fought Reptile at the arcade, like legitimately, because they sure as hell wouldn't be able to afford it.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's like the Simon's Quest approach to secrets.
Yeah.
Some rich dude's gonna write in like, I fought in the arcade.
Yeah, I took fucking $300 down there and just
me and my 3 console Christmas.
But yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, the fatalities were kind of, you look at them now, they're kind of shit.
They're like the one saving grace of the gameplay. Demon's just like, actually, that sucked too.
But they make fun of them in the newer one, right? Where Johnny Cage's head, where he uppercuts their head off. I believe he's got that one in MK1.
Mm-hmm.
And they do one where he uppercuts their head but fucks it up, and then he has to do another take because he's an actor. And they just say, cut, and he does it again. I think that's kind of brilliant too. That they know how primitive their game was, and they still for the time, by modern standards, that they still have enough sort of, they can laugh at themselves, which is something Capcom can't do.
Oh, they're laughing at themselves in this game.
Yeah, but they don't take themselves too seriously. Yeah.
It's never serious. I think that's part of the charm of Mortal Kombat. Like, for all the shit that we give it, like in terms of gameplay, it never takes itself too seriously. It's always like, yeah, we're just a bunch of dudes just having a good time making this fucking game. Like, they seem to give less shit about it than like we do from a critical perspective. There's like, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Now, I'm sure they have much more, serious feelings about it than that. But you just get the impression of, yeah, if you like it, you like it. We're just here to make sure you have a good time. And like, this is ridiculous, and we know it's fucking stupid, but have a good time with it. Yeah,
I mean, I like what Tyger was saying about the fatalities. Actually, go down to fucking Kmart and start writing, or go down and start writing. I totally did that. Write them down.
That's amazing.
And then leave. There was they weren't even putting it in the manual.
No.
They're like, here's some moves. The fatalities, you have to wait for someone else to figure out, put in a cheat guide or a magazine, and and then just watch the computer do it to you until then.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking about fatalities, which were quite a display of amazingness at the time. Well, kind of. Let's talk about how this game looks, how it's held up graphically. So I'll start this one off, and I'll say this. When I played the arcade version, I think like it could look a lot better. But when I look at it of the era, I think it still looks okay. Like, it still looks pretty good. It doesn't look as bad as you think it would. So like, for an arcade game, for the most part, it holds up if you're going to play that version. There's not much wrong with it. It doesn't look as good as, say, Street Fighter or the SNK games, which are like full blown sprites. But I think it's not like visually displeasing. Now, what is visually displeasing is the 16-bit versions of these, especially like the 8-bit ports on the Game Boy and the Game Gear and Demon's aforementioned and beloved Master System. Like, those ports are just, they're pretty fugly. They're not good looking. And they definitely have not aged as well as the Street Fighter or other fighting game ports that use sprites as opposed to digitized graphics, as is the case with many games that chose to went that route, to go that route. for the time, it looked great. I do have to say that, like Demon even said with the gameplay, like for the time, it looked phenomenal. This was what people wanted. But now looking back at it, it's just, it hasn't aged well. The frames of animation are really choppy. It's not that visually pleasing, and you can get better experiences somewhere else on either console. Tyger.
It looks so good.
Does it?
The characters, they look like real people. I said that earlier, didn't I?
Yes.
Yeah, so
You're going to get to it, like you said. Here we are.
Yeah, they're so real. Yeah, that's all I really have to say. Like the graphics, it's like that's what we wanted when we were in the 90s. We wanted graphics that looked real. And as you can see 30 years later, we still don't give a shit if they look like, well, I don't think that's necessarily completely true, but like they obviously didn't go the same route of the way that they filmed and put these characters in the game. That shit don't happen no more. Now they're just like, nah, let's put these little ping pong balls on you.
For good reason.
And then we'll make you in a computer. We'll make you look better than you actually look right now in real life.
Well, I agree with Chris. I think the arcade version still looks good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm kind of half joking, but
yeah. Oh, the 16-bit.
Yeah, but you know, at the time, as I said, you know, during the time, it was like kind of eye-popping, mind-blowing how good it looked. But yeah, as you said earlier, yeah, it doesn't hold up at all.
Well, continue your thoughts there, Demon.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think obviously the 8-bit versions are just the 8-bit versions. Like you can't do anything with that. Like, so they look shit, you know. And I think they did do a slightly better job with it because, believe it or not, MK2 is on the Master System also. They do a better job with that port, but like the 16-bit versions did look good for the time, and it was getting more realistic. But Jesus, it's god awful now, like ugly. It's ugly, but it's funny you talk about like caring about graphics or not caring. I've never really cared that much about the graphics. It just has to look good enough. And I think more people feel that way now that we have such good graphics with games. People are like, it's all right. Like, look at how popular Guilty Gear is. And that's still just like animated. It's like, it looks like hand-drawn, like comic book style, like kind of like the old 2D fighters. Whereas Street Fighter 4 and 5, there's a lot of criticism of how them trying to be realistic. Like, especially with 4, I thought 4 was ugly, and that's got good graphics, but it just doesn't look right. Because I think MK, if you look at a modern MK now, they're so realistic. Like that they have nailed it, and it does look really good. But I don't know if people necessarily care as much as they used to care about graphics. But it was super impressive at the time, and I just remember even like when the first sort of 32-bit consoles came out and they started to get 3D, people were like, "Oh, it's so great! Look how realistic it is." You know, it was definitely a thing that got talked about, and you can see when they created this game, they definitely leveraged people wanting games to look more realistic.
For sure.
Shane?
Yeah, well, and I tend to agree. I mean, it's the same thing as like the diminishing returns thing we were talking about earlier with Mario Kart, right? It applies here too with MK going through the years. Like you start to get to a point where it's just like, you know, Demon is saying like, people don't really care too much about it anymore. And to a certain extent, I think that's true because we've kind of hit a point where it's like, well, I think we've kind of hit the pinnacle. I don't know how much further we can go with this. But back, you know, in 1992, I will say, like, as much as I personally, if this was not already evident, don't necessarily give a huge amount of shit about this game. At the same time, I respect what it did. And this particular category, if we're talking about graphics, like this is the reason why it was what it was, like why it was so culturally relevant and why it made the impact that it did, because this was not the first time, because you had Pit Fighter, but nobody gave a shit about that. But sucks. Like this was the most like prevalent example, the first real thing to sort of like break into the public consciousness of having actual human beings digitized in a game and presented in this fashion. And that's, of course, where the whole craze came around of like, oh, think of the children with the blood and the violence.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Turns out we're mostly okay, I think. But no, I actually agree. Like, as much shit as I've been giving this game, especially the arcade version for sure. I still think it looks pretty good, all things considered. I mean, it's tough too, right? Because if you're comparing this to other sprite based games around this same era, especially other, big heavyweight 16-bit titles, did it age as well as those? No, but that's also because those were much more stylized. And as we all know, the stylized approach tends to hold up far better, over time, where this was going for a much more realistic approach. And just like any other game that does that, even, further on in console generations, when you tried to get that gritty realism or whatever, that shit does not age well. And that kind of happens here. But truth be told, all things being equal, I really do think that arcade Mortal Kombat still looks pretty good for how old it is. The one thing, and I even thought this back in the day when this was still fresh, so I don't know if anybody else thought this or not. Maybe it was just me. This changed with MK2 going forward. But with the first one in particular, I remember even as a kid looking at these sprites. I mean, first of all, I was like, holy shit, that's cool. But then upon closer inspection, because they're real people and because this was sort of the first take on this, you could see the budget in the costumes. Because if you look close enough at some of the costumes for, any of the characters really, but especially Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and you really look at their getups, you're just like, this is one step above Spirit Halloween.
Yes, they're ready for COVID.
They are. This reason Mortal Kombat cosplay was so popular for a couple of years there.
I love how they didn't even spring for the actors either. They're just regular people who worked on the project. They got very. I don't think they got paid a lot. And some of them were the people who worked on the game as well, which is hilarious. Dressed up as ninjas. Yeah. It was quite a good approach, though. To digitize the sprites, it would have been quite expensive at the time, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it paid off, right? This is the thing that set them apart. I mean, we've pretty unequivocally said that the gameplay is not what props this game up by any stretch. So the presentation here is really the thing that sold it. If they hadn't done this, if this had just been a bloody 2D fighting game, but with just, more traditional sprites, I don't think that Mortal Kombat would have gone on to have the franchise and legacy that it does. I think everything was hinged on them, cranking up the realism and violence.
Yeah. It's time to transition over to the music and sound for this game. So I think for this one, Tyger, how about you kick it off? What did you think of the sound direction for Mortal Kombat?
Get over here.
Yes.
That's the iconic, that's the sound effect that I hear when I think of the first Mortal Kombat. Not to mention the first move that I really wanted to do because not one of the easiest, but the sounds were, I've always if you listen to past episodes that I've been on, I'm always a stickler about sound effects, and that's really what can make a game much better than it actually is. Or I can't remember the music very well, though. And I don't know if that's because I barely played the arcade version in a loud setting, or Super Nintendo just had crappy, quiet music. So that didn't really stand out for me very well, except for the character select screen. I remember that music very well. But the sound effects is really what stands out here for me, for the fact that there's people saying things. And I think that's part of the whole realism too. The fact that you're not just hearing some, you're actually hearing a person say words or,
finish
it, whatever.
Yes.
Again, the sound effects are very iconic for the series. And I think that's when you're talking to people about Mortal Kombat, they talk about the fatalities and they talk about the get over here's. Yeah. I think the sound's great.
I'm just going to echo everything Tyger just said. I don't remember the music either. And I think, when I went through the soundtrack for this recently, nothing really stood out. I think everyone remembers the character select screen, but everything beyond that is just very kind of nondescript. Especially, again, here's Street Fighter 2, where pretty much you can play any single one of those themes. And it's oh, that's Ryu's, or, oh, that's Guile's, or that's Ken's. That's not happening here in Mortal Kombat. The music is just there. and it's not particularly good. It's not bad, but it's just there. But the sound effects themselves, those are iconic. The like all the vocalizing that they have there, everyone knows get over here. Everyone knows finish him. Everyone knows that shit. It's everyone knows Toasty. I think that was in the first one. Everyone knows that shit. We all do. Round one fight. Everyone, they think that is either Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. And most of it probably in the United States, that's Mortal Kombat for a lot of people. So the sound design is there. Like even the moves, like what Liu Kang says, or the crazy babble shit that Raiden says, or Raiden, or I think is Raiden. Like all that shit, that's all in there. And that can't be overstated. It's iconic. And that's not even talking about some dude's hat and Watch Dogs. It's actually iconic.
I love that we keep bringing that back.
We have to.
Did you hear that, Ubisoft?
Fuck you, you French company.
There it is again.
All right, Demon, what do you think of the sound design?
Oh, I agree. I think the sound effects are very that's where they nailed it, right? They did a better job with sound. I mean, obviously that little bit rough on the Mega Drive, but like but the sound effects themselves, everyone remembers, come here, get over here. And even what I was impressed with for the time is you uppercut them and the crowd cheers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The stage interacts with what's going on. I remember some of the music, like the pit stage and the things like the character select screen like everyone else, but it's not really the music tracks you remember, and they're not really tied to a character like they are in Street Fighter, where each player has a stage and it has this music. It's not like that. But I think the sound effects, everyone knows them, and they were well implemented. The use of like commentary effectively during the match, or even like when you get to the second one where you got Shao Kahn speaking, while you're fighting, like he's watching. I think all this stuff's for the time. It still holds up. It's still cool to hear it,
Yeah.
And it's not annoying the way Street Fighter is. Like when you throw Hadoukens, Raiden's, is, but like for the most part, you're not just hitting. This is one of the things that drives my girlfriend nuts when I play these fighting games, is that when they say something, when they shoot a fireball, it's fucking annoying over and over and over again. And they didn't really do that in Mortal Kombat, and I think that's good. It didn't say toasty every single time. It didn't say excellent every time you uppercutted them. Just every now and then. I think that was really well done.
Oh, yeah. Shane?
I tend to agree with pretty much what everybody's said. I will say that for my own personal experience, obviously we're going to have to do an episode about this, but MK2's music, they stepped it up hard on that, because I remember to this day a lot of MK2's stage tracks, because they're good. They're not bad here either, actually. I actually really dig the vibe that they went with this. It does fit the more, sort of, I guess, gritty tone that they were trying to go for as far as like the violence and stuff. I do like a lot of the more sort of like bassy drums that they've got. It gives it this very sort of like tribal kind of feel, which I think fits really well. I love the gong sound effect when you go into the character select screen. Like that's just fantastic. I feel like I'm a little bit more positive about the backing tracks in this game than I think maybe y'all are, just because they're not super iconic, but they're also not intrusive. I think they do what they need to do. And if you really do listen to them, because truth be told, like if you were playing this, chances are it was in a super loud fucking arcade. So you probably didn't get a chance to really hear a lot of it, especially since the sound effects of this game are always going to drown that out more than anything. But I actually do appreciate the music that they've done in this game. And of course, the sound design is great too. There's a lot of like weight behind a lot of the effects. Like the uppercut feels fucking heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you drop someone, like if you sweep the leg or something and they drop down to the ground, like there is a real weighty thud that happens, which, not all games have that. And so it does really lend this weight, for lack of a better term, to, the proceedings that you don't always get. And if you don't have that, especially in a visceral game like this, things tend to feel kind of floaty, and you do not have that here. It's one of those things that tends to get understated, I think, a lot of the time. It's just how important good sound design is to the overall feel and experience of a game. And I do think that they really nailed it here. Props to them for sure.
Okay, so that wraps it up. We're going to skip the miscellaneous section for today. Not because we don't have a lot of stuff, but I think a lot of that stuff has been covered on the internet ad nauseum. Go look that stuff up if you choose to. There's a ton of stuff from Mortal Kombat, by the way. Just too much we'd probably list in here. We'd be here all day. But we're going to talk about whether or not this game holds up today. And to start us off right now, we're going to go to Demon. Typically, we do the guests last, but we're going to kick it off to Demon first, and we're going to finish this off with our Nintendhost. So, Demon, does this game hold up today?
Not really. I mean, it's playable and it's fun, but it's, again, I'd just play number 2. You know what I mean? Like, or 3. Like, one is good, but it just doesn't. Look, to me, this game, it's not like going back and playing Street Fighter 2, as again, to compare Mortal Kombat to Street Fighter, or even to go back and play earlier, like King of Fighters or whatever, right? It doesn't, or even Killer Instinct on the SNES, which again ripped off finishing moves from Mortal Kombat. But it doesn't hold up that way. I just feel like it's if it does, if you want to say it holds up, it's only barely. For me, you're just better off playing Mortal Kombat 2 if you want that retro Mortal Kombat experience. This you can sort of give a miss.
All right, cool. Thank you very much. So next we'll kick it over to Shane.
All right. So my thoughts on whether this holds up today. I think we've been very clear about Mortal Kombat being, a significant milestone, right, in the history of video games, for sure. I think its role in the creation of the ESRB and the industry sort of self-policing and that sort of thing really can't be understated. But it's something that, like, I've never really been able to shake. And it's a sense, as I sort of brought up before, that the actual gameplay experience of Mortal Kombat is just not that great. I think a lot of times when folks look back on this game, they tend to conflate the game's sort of, ubiquity and part of the cultural zeitgeist at the time and their personal experiences in the arcades, which I'm not going to downplay, with the game's actual quality. I honestly think that if you were to remove all the sensationalism from Mortal Kombat, you would end up with, as I said, a slightly above average 2D fighter. So does it hold up today? Honestly, not really. If it's something, if you're interested and it's something that you want to go back and see what kind of started it all and what was the thing that got everybody all up in arms and things like that, like, it's certainly playable. It's not like it's a total dumpster fire or anything. It is absolutely something you can go back and play and probably get a decent amount of enjoyment out of. But, like, would you really want to when there are other things, even in the series, that it started that are probably going to be a better time? As Demon said, like, looking at it now, you're far better off starting with just like MK2. It basically takes everything that Mortal Kombat did, improves, streamlines, enhances, and expands upon. And really, I think that's a superior experience in just about every category. So I guess that's sort of a lot to say. Nah, not really. I think it was important at the time for sure, and it deserves that recognition, but I don't think it's worth going back to today.
Yeah, I think I'm going to continue this trend with a K. Like, if you go to the arcade version, playing the arcade version, it could have been a lot worse. I thought I was in for a lot worse of a time. I thought I was not going to enjoy myself. But there are some really good silver linings here that, like, let's say you're playing against somebody. It's not that terrible of a fighting game. It's certainly better than efforts like Primal Rage or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters or a lot of other, like, 2D fighter of the era. It certainly could have been worse. All that being said, the chances of you regularly being able to compete against somebody and that being the prime way of playing this game is probably not what's going to be happening today. You could be, and you probably could have a good time. But as Shane said, like, why would you? There's so much better games that you would play if you want to play competitively, not to mention almost all of its peers of the era, like even contemporaneously in its own time. There's just better options to be had. But if you do want to play this game and you want to relive that nostalgia and you're going to play this game single player, the biggest thing that keeps me from recommending this game as something that holds up is the absolutely horrific AI and how abusive it is and how it can read your inputs. It doesn't really encourage the player in any sense. And this includes on the console, not just the arcade. Like in every single version of this game, it just doesn't, it has no chill. It doesn't give a fuck. It's going to beat you down. It's going to make you know that you're its bitch. John Romero would be very, very jealous of Mortal Kombat. I think he is. But when you look at like the gameplay and the fact that every single time you do any sort of input, the computer knows exactly what you're going to do, it makes the overall experience unenjoyable. And because of that, and all the other options that you do have, including its sequel, which does a lot of the same bullshit, by the way, mind you, there's no reason at all to go back to the original Mortal Kombat. Even the fatalities are better in 2, and that's the most that's the biggest attraction that you could possibly have in this game. It's not the worst fighter, like I said, but there are better ones. So does it hold up? No. Just go somewhere else. Find something better to do. And I know that's kind of cheap saying, yeah, I mean, better ones came out later, because you could say that for a lot of games. But in this case, it wasn't even the best fighter in the year it came out. It wasn't even the second best fighter in the year it came out. So why would you go back to play the 4th or 5th best fighting game of 1992 other than just to relive your nostalgia? So absolutely not. Tyger, close it out.
My nostalgia is so strong. I want to go relive it.
The power is within you.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat 1, man. I do want to say that if you do force yourself to play this game for any reason, you should at least do yourself a favor and play the arcade version, because that is definitely the best version among all of the different versions. Yeah, it doesn't hold up very well. Looking back upon it, and I didn't mention this earlier, doesn't even have a combo system. In games didn't have combo systems at the time, so probably wasn't very, it wasn't out of the ordinary. And actually, Street Fighter 2 kind of had a combo system, but it was like for advanced players to know how to perform those things. So it really just comes off as a super basic fighter. And I guess I'm trying to like compare it to all these other fighting games at the time. They really did follow suit, because it's just like, I guess they only did 7 characters, which is pretty low, but like everyone had like 2 to 4 moves. That's pretty much how it was for a lot of fighting games then. But it's weird how it feels like I could go back and play Street Fighter 2 and World Heroes and Fatal Fury and kind of get more enjoyment out of those games in comparison to Mortal Kombat, and not really know why.
Yeah.
Other than it looks like garbage. Like I can't think of anything more than that, because oh boy. Like and again, I say that the fatalities were what really drew you to the game. So now that every game from then to now is, filled with gore and people like cutting everything off, and, just as far as you can imagine, like this is kind of where it started. Like it just feels like nothing. It doesn't, no, it doesn't hold up at all. It doesn't hold up. So like that is just how it is. I do think that, if you have a desire, I think just doing the fatalities yourself and seeing how they work, and you play it for like, yeah, I give you 5 minutes. You get 5 minutes and then you're good. You were saying like about what do you call it, the AI? Yeah, you're really just kind of like cheesing. You're learning how to cheese if you play Mortal Kombat 1, which is really no fun. And yeah, so if you do play, the best way to play is with another person, just so you can say you played that old game. Any other Mortal Kombat, like everyone else has said, would be a better choice. But I also agree with Mortal Kombat 2, because I feel like that was kind of sort of, I guess, retrospect in retro times, the pinnacle of Mortal Kombat. So, yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, there you have it.
So fuck Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Maybe not as good as everybody remembers. It's certainly not the first time that we've come to that conclusion on the show. But at any rate, of course, we appreciate having both of our wonderful extra retro hangover appendages here in the form of guest hosts. So we appreciate y'all being here. We hope you had a good time. We hope everybody enjoyed listening in. I think actually our discussion today went a little bit more in depth than we thought it was going to. So I hope you guys enjoyed the extra meaty conversation.
Meaty, girthy.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Girthy content.
So if this happens to be the first time that you are joining us, then we would like to welcome you. I hope you enjoyed your stay and hope you'll stick around. If this is a return visit for you, then we appreciate you just as much. And if you'd like to engage with the show beyond just listening to us yap at you, you can do that, and we make it easy. All you have to do is head to linktree/retro hangover. It's linktr.ee/retro hangover, and you will be presented with all of the different destinations that you can wander on to, as long as it has something to do with us, whether that be our social media, or perhaps our YouTube channel, or the Patreon, or our merch store, if you'd like to support the show in that fashion. And we also have a Twitch channel where we play video games. I'm not going to say that we do it well, but we certainly do that. Chris, when does that happen, and how can they find us?
You can go to twitch.tv/retro hangover at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, US. That's where we play video games poorly for you. And
well,
yeah.
Okay.
So twitch.tv/retro hangover, and see some dick dragons, hopefully not FAP, but play video games.
Yeah, that's a different website.
That's DSP.
Ah, that's right. So I suppose then, with all of that being said, until next time,
play with your joysticks. That's Raiden. Is that Raiden? I think it's Raiden. Do I need to do that again?